How many Lost Boys fans have we got here this morning? I can't hear you. How many Lost Boys fans have we got here this morning? I have to tell you this. When I was a kid, the scariest vampire for me was the child floating outside the window in Salem's Lot. But when you think about it, there's another scary vampire that also has an impact, and it's this guy. 10-year-old vampires really get under your skin. When we were talking, how many of you are new today? How many of you weren't here yesterday? Okay, good. I made the mistake yesterday of assuming that you'd had a longer career than you'd had when you came into Lost Boys. It was one of, if not the first job that you had in movies. Do you want to just say where you were and what you were doing in your life when the opportunity came to you?
Sure. So, good morning, everybody. Good morning. So, this was the first really anything that I had done. I hadn't done a school play. I hadn't done a commercial. And typically leading up to a movie like that, there is some experience. I had none. Got very fortunate to, the opportunity, the timing, the look. It just worked. But I hadn't really had any aspirations to become an actor. My father was the one who was pursuing it, and I was born in Ohio, of all places. And around 6 years old, my dad wanted to live out his dream. Does anybody remember the group Van Halen? Yeah. So my dad had an opportunity once David Lee Roth left Van Halen to do the California Girls video, and I saw him in that, and I was around 6, 7, and I thought, how cool. So I asked, let me try. So about 8 years old, I got an agent and started to go out, and right at 9, probably 5, 6, 7 auditions in, I got the audition for the Lost Boys, and walked in, and just everything clicked, and then it went from my dad pursuing sort of his dreams to following me around, taking me because we were really busy. So that's kind of how it all started.
I know it's a long time ago and you were young. What do you recall of the audition process? What were they asking you to do? What did they see in you that made them want to cast you as Laddie?
I think it was, I looked really different than the rest of the kids that were there. I actually had long hair. I skateboarded, so I had a certain look. I think that didn't hurt. I didn't have any acting chops at that point, and nor did I really need them for necessarily the role. It was a look. I think it was a look. It was a vibe. It was a feel. And I met the casting director, and she immediately took me over to see Joel. And it kind of all fell into place. But the other kids that were there auditioning didn't look like I did, so it didn't hurt. Yeah.
Were you odd looking in any way, or were you just different?
I looked just like that. I mean, it didn't. So it wasn't necessarily odd, and I think it was an attitude. I had a little bit of an attitude, which I don't think hurt. It sort of all worked out. There wasn't a lot of lines. There was a scene in the movie that sort of gave a backstory on Laddie and how he ended up with Star, and that was a scene that we acted out in the audition. But I'm not sure that went really well because I really didn't know what I was doing. It was more of a dialogue and a conversation, and just really. They saw something that I certainly I didn't.
But you were reacting to what they were telling you, and obviously what you were doing was right. You took my next question out of my mouth because I wanted to ask about backstory. Yeah. We come into the story of the Lost Boys when they've been around for a long time. There's been things going on in that town. The grandfather at the end of the film says, the one thing I hated was all the damn vampires. People are aware that this has been going on. So where does your character come in? At 10 years old, were you able to formulate a backstory for him? Or was it something that you worked on with Joel with the casting director, with other people?
You know, I didn't, and I think it was just being in the moment. It wasn't until later on that I actually looked back and realized sort of there was a lot of certain scenes that were left on the editing room floor that maybe could have filled in those gaps a little bit, but I'm not sure they were necessarily needed. They weren't, obviously. The movie was great, but you know, I didn't. I just played off the person that was in front of me, and again, didn't know how to look for a backstory. I was brand new, so it was kind of easy to play off the other actors, specifically because there was this really brotherly, sisterly, motherly sort of love on the set every day. Made it very easy to transition over into something so major. And the great thing was it wasn't. It could have been more overwhelming and bigger for me, obviously. But everybody made it very comfortable. Very comfortable.
How old were you, 9, 10?
I was 9. I turned 10 on the set, and actually Billy and Brooke on the set when I turned 10 went out, and I don't know how they did this, but they got a big cake that was made like the cave in the movie, and we had a little birthday party, so they were very sweet, very sweet.
So I mean, as an experience, it's work, it's growing up as well in a way, finding a brotherhood with guys who are 10 years older. It must have been, I'm assuming, it must have been a fairly massive, seismic moment in your life as a 10-year-old.
This movie? It was epic. And I didn't realize how big it was. You know, when my father, like I refer back to him, was pursuing his dream, he understood. I mean, he literally moved the entire family out to pursue a dream, and he understood the magnitude of what it was once we got the call, and they said, yeah, you're doing it. And then they sort of, it really was overwhelming for him to see, like, yeah, okay, this is the beginning of something, because when you get something this big, when you're an actor, the door doesn't just open, it kind of slams open, and you're afforded some opportunities to at least attempt to go out for roles that you otherwise wouldn't, because it's very hard. So in the beginning, I'll give you an example. When you're going out for auditions, you can do 5 auditions, 6 auditions in a day. And that can be pretty grueling because you're just traveling all around. And early on in my career, you know, we were riding buses to get everywhere. You know, so my mom and dad would jump on 5, 6 buses to get to these auditions. And it can be pretty challenging. And then so after you do a movie like this, and then everybody really knows your name, they know you play well on screen. You know,
they're coming to you as well, I suppose.
They do. So what happens is casting agents will call your agent and say, we want to see him, at least see if he's right for the part. And that's when the madness kind of starts. And it's a good madness. It's not bad.
Okay. We've got Ben over here with a microphone, so he will come to you for questions. I'm going to ask one more question and then come to you guys. You said something yesterday about a sequence in the film that genuinely unsettled you. You were frightened. And I wondered whether you'd tell that story again for our new audience.
Yeah, so I was talking about the bed scene, the big one, the epic one for Laddie, where he pops out of the bed. Holy, it's the attack of Eddie Munster. So leading up to that, being 9, 10 years old, looking back, it's pretty fairly simple sort of process. It's a bunch of air compressors under a bed with a hole in it. Some, torn up sheets. They all came up. Seemed pretty fairly simple. Well, we got in, action, air compressors go off. I come out of the bed and I start to really scream and get into it. But once they yelled cut, I refused to go back in. I was scared. I was very scared, and so they had to get my stunt double Larry to finish, and they did 2 or 3 extra takes and sort of chopped him into the overall thing. But Yeah, it was quite frightening. Funny now, I look back, I go, "It's air compressor, what are you doing?" But it was very scary.
You said also that Joel Schumacher was very. You said that Joel Schumacher was very, very warm to his cast and very, very caring. How did he approach you with that issue?
Well, he told them I wasn't going back in. If he doesn't want to go back in, he's not going back in. We'll make it work and we'll figure it out. And he understood I was truly scared. You know, never been through. And it was fairly early on. I remember in the filming process that we did this big scene. It was maybe halfway through. So his caring showed, and it really, you know, helped me through the rest of the show. And then, you know, the overall scene actually came out really well. And there's a lot of Larry mixed in there that you can't see. Yeah.
It didn't throw you to the wolves. That's a good thing.
Hi. When did you first get to see the film? Did you see it straight away, or did your parents make you wait until you were older?
No, I went to the premiere. So they had a big premiere for the cast and crew in LA, and that day I had a lot of my family with me, and I had the same response that probably many of you who have seen the film for the first time had, and it was awesome. You know, it was really, really awesome, especially to sit there, and I was super proud seeing my mom and dad and, you know, my aunts, and, you know, there was probably 20 Corbitts in the audience, and they screamed very loud. So the cool thing is, if you look, for an actor, seeing your name on the credits is sort of a big deal, especially for your first time. And, you know, I was down on the depth chart as far as the I thought where I should be in the credits, and then it said also starring, and then boom, Chance Corbitt, right? My entire family stands up, they start screaming. I mean, we're in the room with, you know, producers, Richard Donner, Joel, everybody, and so we represented our Ohioan roots a little bit, right? Yeah.
And somebody asked you yesterday, you've got children of your own, I understand.
I do.
Have you allowed them to see the film yet, or are you waiting until maybe they're slightly older?
My oldest daughter has seen it a lot, and she likes it. I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I sat down with them probably a year ago, because it's on quite a bit, and they started to watch it, and they don't necessarily get it yet. So they see the scary kid, and
recognize Dad?
They do, because my daughter looks just like that. Exactly. And I'd say probably 15 is when they'll probably really get it and understand and watch it. So, but they saw scenes, different scenes.
Hello.
Morning.
Morning. So, obviously, brotherhood is a big part of the film and stuff like that, and family. You were the youngest. Did you party with Corey Haim and Feldman and everything else, or were you like sort of kept away from partying later on at night and stuff with them?
No, they protected me. They kept me away from that. I was trying, you know. I was a very mature 10-year-old. I was trying to get into everything, all the same shit that they were into. But I can remember it was one of the first. We were in Santa Cruz, and we filmed Tim Capella's scene, and that's where you sort of first really meet Laddie, and that's when Star and I are on the boardwalk, and we sort of run up. And I can remember that specific scene. There was a lot of local Santa Cruz people that were in the audience, and so during the different takes, there were. I can remember Jamie Gertz specifically. There were some extras that were engaging in some pot, right? And so the guy, and I think he was making a joke, but Jamie didn't take it as a joke. He goes, "Here, little guy," you know. And she completely lost her shit on this guy. Do you know he's a kid? He's a 10-year-old, and they were extremely protective of me because I was the youngest, you know. Thought I was older, but I was just a baby, you know.
Were you aware when you got the script of the enormity of the story or the entirety of the story? So were you aware of all the gore scenes, the attacks and everything like that? Or were you only, because we were talking about this with one of the other guests yesterday, about going through a script and finding your lines and saying bullshit, 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 me, bullshit, 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 my line. So did you only do your lines, your sequences, or did you know the entirety of the story?
I had a sense of it. You know, Laddie didn't have many lines, so I didn't have to go through a lot and find my lines, right? There was very, very few, but I did understand sort of what it was on paper, but until you really, like I said, when you're at the premiere and you see what Michael Chapman and Joel sort of created with what was on paper, you couldn't really visualize it. And then when you got on set and you saw the cave, like this massive thing that they built on a stage in the back of Warner Brothers studio, then things start to become a little clearer on sort of where this thing is. But it's really, really challenging sometimes to see that. And that's why directors...
To visualize it, you mean?
It's really hard,
yeah.
So so to answer your question, long story short, it wasn't necessarily that I could see the vision of what it was going to look like, but I understood that there was something very special.
So seeing the film for the first time with everybody else, were you as surprised, as wowed as all of us watching it as an audience for the first time?
I think everybody was. Everybody that was in the audience. It was from the music and how it was placed at the right time to the way it looked visually back then. It was a little, it was just different. It was just very, very different and super cool and sexy and just, it just worked.
Talking to Jason Patrick yesterday, and we were discussing the construct of the film, if you like, and he said he originally turned it down. He didn't want to do a vampire movie. And then he realized it wasn't just a vampire movie. It was a coming-of-age film. It was a romance. It was a story about grief, because the father's missing from the situation, bonding and brotherhood and everything else. He said there's all of that going on. And I remember when the film opened here in the UK, I can't remember how it was received in America, but in the UK, a lot of the UK reviewers were saying this is an instant classic because it covers all of that ground. And I wonder, being 10 years old, were you aware of that at the time, or has the awareness of that grown over the years as you've got older and as you've done stuff like this, meeting fans?
Well, I knew it was special, and I knew it was, like I said from the premiere, I didn't really realize the impact that it had and the longevity of it until we got a call in 2005 to get us all together for a reunion, and we came out here. Actually, we were in London, outside of London, Milton Keynes, and then the reaction from the fans, and then you realize, and you go, hold on, wait a minute, this was something super special.
Did that take you by surprise, though?
Yeah, it did.
And
it did. It took me very humbling experience.
And was that a British thing as opposed to a stateside thing? The fact that it happened here, or was it just happening everywhere?
I think after that, we went around and we sort of met some more fans. We did a few shows and things like that, and the impact that movie had. And I know Billy had mentioned it yesterday. There's people with tattoos of certain characters that are on their arm. There was a young lady that had a tattoo of Laddie on her forearm, and so that's a commitment to something that meant something to somebody, and it was really special to that person. So when you see that, it's humbling. It's really humbling, and so then you have a different perspective when you go back and you watch the movie you look through it through a little different lens. I'm older now, and so I could see. Because like I said, it's hard to understand when you're in the moment of sort of what you're doing, but as you get older and you go back and you look and you go, holy shit, like when everybody's talking about, it's hard to do this in a movie. It's hard. I've done a lot of movies, big movies that didn't have the same impact on people. They were visually great, but when you read a good book and it just does something to you, or that's what this movie did. And so when Jason was talking about having all of those different elements, when it's the brotherhood, the camaraderie, the love story, right? Everybody loves a good love story, a little horror, a lot of comedy. When you can create all of those things and add some cool music to it. So now when I look back, like I said, through an older lens, I see why it had an impact on people and why it sort of withstood the test of time. So when we get to interact with the fans, specifically me again, I can appreciate it because I do understand where they're coming from, because I'm just as big of a fan of the movie as sort of everybody that comes out.
And that comes through very clearly as well. I mean, yesterday on stage, it was. I mean, you're such a good bunch of guys. Question.
Hi, Chance.
Morning.
I remember I was about 11 or 12 seeing the trailer in this cinema and thinking it was utterly terrifying. It was the bit where they went out to get the dog and everybody's at the door shouting, "Come back, they're coming." So I wondered, given your story about them being very conscious of your safety, physical safety on the set, what did they do to protect you from some of the scarier elements like the makeup and the horror, the threat?
I think it's different. I think once you're there, it's not as... It wasn't as scary. I did a movie where I actually got scared right after I filmed The Lost Boys. I did a movie called Pumpkinhead, and it was day 2 that I was there. This is when I was really scared. So I had walked into a trailer by accident, and that's where they had the creature, and it was dark. That scared the shit out of me. That was scary. For The Lost Boys, the only thing that really scared me on the set was that scene with the overall was fine. It was a process to get into the makeup, so I understood it because I was, a vampire, and seeing it and then seeing everybody else. So it wasn't scary at all. So they didn't really have to, and maybe they did, and I didn't know. But there wasn't anything where that I felt scared, But it was kind of cool to put the makeup on. And then you go down to Warner Brothers commissary, and you're sitting there with all this cool sort of makeup on, eating lunch with people. It was very cool. Nails were a problem, but and the contacts were a little bit of a problem, but the makeup was super cool.
Hi, Chance.
Good
Did
morning.
you enjoy shooting the film in Santa Cruz, as it's such a small town?
It was fun. It was a little bit of a skater town, so there'd be days when the older boys would go and they'd skateboard down to the boardwalk. We all stayed in a hotel that was about a mile from the beach, and understanding the how protective they were of me, and this is where I'd get into, where's Chance? The boy, 14-year-olds would go and they'd skateboard down the street, and I said, I'm going to go with them. Why not? And didn't ask anybody's permission. I'd be gone, and just go in and cruise and hang, and that was fun. But we had gone back, I think 2008, and we watched the movie on the boardwalk. A lot of us. The mayor came out. It was super cool, and then we drove through the town. Pretty nostalgic to be back. Town hasn't changed. I mean, it's still pretty much exactly the same as it was back then. Very, very cool town. A lot of the scenes that you see in the opening are people that just are there. That's what it looks like. If you ever get a chance, go see it. And it's cool. I don't know who made that sign, but I keep staring at it. It looks exactly the same. It's pretty cool.
Well, you know that vampires don't age, so maybe the town doesn't age.
Well, I did see Billy. Yeah, he doesn't age at all, does he?
Final question, because we need to conclude. I don't think some of you had seen each other for 30 years prior to this. I don't want to over-egg it, but what is it like to see them again after all this time, to catch up, whether it's here or anywhere else? But is it a big deal to see the guys again and to be a part of it as an ensemble again?
It is. I was talking with someone this morning, and it's weird when we get together. and all of us have different career choices and paths and families and distractions and things that happen. But when we're together, it's pretty magical. It's fun, and I really enjoy these moments when we get to spend and see him. So it's cool, and we got a few more plans, so we'll see.
Well, thank you for coming to us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming here.
Yeah.
This is Manchester. This is about as good as it gets. Ladies and gentlemen, would you show
Thanks,
your
guys.
appreciation?
Appreciate it. Thank you so
Chance
much.
Corbitt.
All right. Thank you.